Now,
Living in a great big way.
one more, boy.
Living in a great big way. Louis.
Hi, and welcome to my office. I'm in my downstairs office today recording because my kids are home for the summer. There's their last day of school today. So I'll probably be recording down here for the summer. But I thought today I'd start a little series called In the Studio with Mary. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite you in to see what I've been working on and then have you paint something like I've been painting. And I hope these will be pretty simple and fun and kind of in more specific to the style that I paint. So I have been painting on these little wood panels, and I have been playing around with methods to add watercolor ground to these little wood panels so that I can actually watercolor on them. I've done lots of iterations of this. I've glued paper to panels like this. I've painted watercolor first and then tried to glue it on. So far, this method is my favorite. I'm using something called watercolor ground. So I have a jar of it. It's kind of expensive, and you basically paint it on, or I kind of use a palette knife, and then you let it dry, and then you can use it just like watercolor paper. This that I have on this one is an experiment that I did with actually a couple materials. I can tell you more about it if you want to know, but basically I ground up some recycled paper and created my own watercolor ground that I actually like better than the one that I bought. So I'm excited to try that. I tried a second version of it and completely ruined it. I let the recycled paper dry out too long, so it's still very much an experiment in progress. But I want us to do this little painting today of poppies. They're just like my favorite thing to paint because, first of all, the colors. The oranges and the pinks and the yellows, just great. And their shapes are the kind of shapes that I really like to paint. And they're also pretty easy to draw. And then they're just cute and easy. So we're gonna do a little painting like this. I think I'm gonna use a piece of 5x7 paper. Like always, I'm gonna give you a template that you can use if you don't want to draw it out, but we will draw it together. And if you grab, as far as supplies, grab the normal palette that you have, something to mix on. I am also going to be using, if you're drawing it out, grab a pencil. I'm also going to be using a couple chalk pastels for a few details. That's not required, but if you have them, they're really fun to use. I use them all the time. And this is actually a layer of watercolor and then chalk pastels on the top. We'll do kind of a limited version of this. Yeah, so grab your supplies, grab your paper. If you want to print the template on watercolor paper, do that. I'll have that in the files at the end of this post. And yeah, so let's get started. Welcome to my studio. All right, I've got my paper, my pencil, and my watercolor, and here's the example that I did the other day. Just very simple shapes. I wanted to show you. I always like to pull up pictures. Just show you a couple shapes. Poppies can be really varied, depending what angle you're looking at. This one is kind of spread out. So if you wanted to pull up a picture, and this is what the seed pods look like. There's lots of different versions. You have the California ones that are really yellow. And here's a picture of some California poppies. You can see, you know, from different angles, they look differently. Their seed pods are pointed like that instead of the other shape we saw. Um, really like these. So if you need to pull up a picture, you know, do that to reference. I like to keep one close by. Sometimes I print them, but we're gonna keep it. First of all, I'm gonna draw. I don't want to fill this whole paper. I want to keep it like that square shape. I might even. So sometimes when I'm painting, I like to create almost a white space around my painting. I don't always like to go to the edge. I just think that kind of looks interesting. And then it also looks better framed because you've got some space around your painting. I don't know. I think that's just visually interesting. So if you've ever seen some of the landscapes I did a couple years ago, I did that. I kept them in the center. Okay, I've drawn just a light rectangle, light, almost square that I'm going to work with. And I'm going to have one poppy here. You know, and I'm not worrying about being too accurate, precise. All right, and I always do at least 3 flowers. Okay, this leaf's gonna go this way. This petal's gonna be here. This petal's kind of in the front. And maybe what I'll do is I'll put a little drawing guide in the in your little printables pack this week so you can have a little guide. Did I say that these are going to be, we'll go with the California poppies for these. And poppy leaves are always kind of funny. They're very wispy and thin. I'm just going to do a few, and then I think maybe I'll have a couple of these little pods coming out here. Maybe one more. And then just a couple more leaves off to the side. Okay, yes. So let's do that. And then what I'm going to do is, this is the part that's optional, but I'm going to take my chalk pastels. These are actually called new pastels. They're kind of fancy and I love them. You can use them dry or you can dip them in water. And what I've been doing lately in the studio, which is why you're in here with me today, is I've just been almost like color blocking out, because sometimes what happens is I have an idea and then when I go to paint I forget what color is supposed to be what or where I want what color. So I've been blocking out just really lightly where I want color. So I'm going to use, probably going to be using orange, red, dark orange, yellow, and this darker yellow. And I'm just going to kind of block in before I might do my layer of watercolor. That also kind of helps me decide where I want the shadows to fall, where I want things to be darker. I might even, for the shading on these, we talked about value in the last lesson, I might use a little blue. So using this chalk helps me block out where I see the shadows falling in my flowers here. So it's just a little way for me to kind of map out where I'm going to put what. So, I mean, I have to follow it. It's just giving me, and of course, always pull in pink. There's my pink. You can see my pink is down to a little nub because I love using pink. Now what's going to happen is when I go over with this, these will kind of dissolve once I paint over them. So I just think then I can also map out the color of the background. And as you can see here, I did like a tealy green blue, and it's very kind of washy. So I am going to definitely do that. So again, I'm just kind of sketching in here the colors. You could also do this in colored pencil. Kind of depends on what you want to be visible under here. I kind of like that those lines are visible once they'll wash out a little bit, you'll see. But okay, so I've got my sketch all ready. And now I'm going to grab my paints. I forgot to load up on my water. So I'm going to grab my water and we're going to start and paint the background first. So take a minute, finish up your sketch. Definitely you can place the flowers in different areas if you want. I like to kind of keep them, mine are kind of in this part of the painting, and there's 3 of them. 3 always seems to work, kind of balancing out your painting. It always kind of looks a little wonky when I just do 2, so I always recommend 3. Okay, grabbing water and I'll be right back. Okay, I grabbed my water and now we're ready to paint. And like I said, I'm going to start with the background. That's something that I've been doing in my work recently that's kind of helped me. I think it's much easier to work from a color surface and then build in your details than to kind of start with a completely blank white piece of paper. I know a lot of artists that'll have like an underpainting color, and then they'll start and they'll build on that. And I think there's something about just the white paper staring you in the face that that I don't like. You can hear my cats. Sorry, they're talking to me. I am gonna need to grab some more blue. I'll be right back. I'm trying to mix like this greeny blue, so I think I need some more blue paint, and I'm low on that. I'm gonna grab my tube of paint and be right back. Refill. I got this tube of paint. Not super picky about brand that I use, not yet at least, but we have a local creative reuse store, and I got this there. Really good price. I don't know if you have one of those in your area, but I love ours. I always find interesting things. So I'm gonna mix that blue. Okay, that blue is much better. Very teal. And remember, when you're painting the background, you want to mix a lot of whatever color you do so that you have enough of it. You go around it. Now I am going to be dropping in different colors while it's wet. And I'm just going to be painting around my sketch. I don't know. I find this so much easier than trying to go back later. And I'm not sure why. There's not really a rule. And I'm just going to leave a thin line for the stems that I have to do. The risky thing about doing this green background is that you won't see the stems because the background is also green. So I'm just going to have to watch that and just make sure I do a really, really light like yellow, green with a lot of yellow so that you could actually see it. Otherwise, it's just going to blend in and you're not going to be able to kind of read that as a stem. So I think leaving a little bit of white space around it will help. And also, if I drop some blue into here as I go, just kind of creating areas, maybe even some purple, areas of darker value. And I just want to be careful again when I'm swishing out my water that I'm not continuing to dilute my color that I've mixed. That's something I'm trying to improve on, because it'll continue to get thinned out and then you lose that brilliant color that you started with if you continue to kind of wash out your brush. If you see here, it's getting a little streaky, so I may have to remix this color. That's okay. I think I can kind of remember how we did it. And so that chalk line, it's not a barrier, but it does kind of helps me see a little more than the pencil. I'm trying to do this so I get an even coating of paint. I don't really want to see the light lines. So that's the drawback of working with less water on your brush, is that it's going to dry faster and it's a little harder to get just an even layer sometimes if you're not painting fast enough. And what I mean is, like, as it's drying right there, and you can kind of re-wet it and pull the color down. Like I said, I'm just gonna work around those little wispy green leaves. And as this is still wet, I'm gonna keep dropping in some color, not too much. I don't want to like over saturate it. But I do want to drop that color in while it's still wet. And I am going to have to mix a little more of this green color. You hear some scratching. My cats are down here. I got him a new scratching post. And I hadn't seemed very interested in it until I started recording, which is typical, I guess. They want to get in on this. Okay, so this I added to get this color, purple, blue, and green. All right, I'm gonna try to tap it out. I don't want it to be too wet. You can see that it's a little darker, but I don't mind that too much because this is kind of in the middle of a flower, so it would naturally be like a place that would make sense for it to be a little darker. And we're not aiming for perfection. We're just trying to capture the beauty of these flowers. The beauty of like that time in the summer when they're just kind of swaying in the fields and it's bright and sunny. Kind of the feeling and the thing that we want to capture. And that's what's beautiful about art. It can, the way that you feel, the way you can breathe, in those environments. Art can really capture that and bring that indoors and bring that inside all year. That's why we love art. And it just captures the beauty of the natural world. And I was thinking the other day that, the irregularity and the imperfections of nature are what make it really beautiful, and why art, that's created by your hands, not a computer or or something, is what makes it special, because it has your own imperfections, and it has your own way of seeing the world captured. And it also captures that, that moment of creation that you were in. Okay, I'm just dropping some purple in there just to kind of create some darker shades. Okay, so I really love this. I love working from, and drop a little bit of yellow just kind of for variety. I'm going to pause this here, let you finish up, and I'll be right back. I'm going to dry this, and we'll be right back to do the flowers. I've got this layer all dry, and it's ready for the next layer. Sometimes I'm going to paint. I've got some masking tape here, and I'm just going to tape down the edges. It'll also give me somewhere to put my fingers, because sometimes I tend to smudge. Like if I want to preserve this white, you could tape around your rectangle if you really want to be careful about it. Sometimes I'll smudge my painting. I get really frustrated when I do that. Just gonna put that down so I have some place to put my fingers. Sometimes in the process of painting, I fall in love with like one step of it. Like, for example, this I really love this right here with that tiny little sketches of pastel in the background. So sometimes I really love a step of the painting even more than the finished one. Sometimes I overwork it, but we are going to keep going on this one. So the colors of those poppies were really light orange. And I'm going to add quite a bit of yellow to this orange. See that? I think I'll do the poppies first, and then do the stems and the leaves. I think I want to go even more. So I have my water over here. But one of the risks of that is that when you cross your brush over your painting, sometimes it'll drip. So it's a little tip. I'm just trying to be careful not to do that. I am gonna start with this light orange, and then probably what I'll do is start bringing in darker tones and just a little bit of red, and a little bit of pink as we go. And you can kind of see that those colors that I put down in chalk just blend right in, and depending on the kind of, so I find it so much easier to put that flower in if I've already done the background, rather than the other way around, trying to do the background around the flower. I don't know. That's probably just a preference thing. If you've got like a red, you drop that in there in the bottom where you know there's going to be some shade, and just we want to bring in a couple colors just to make it create that value, make it more interesting. And this one here, you see this little front petal. And I like a little bit of white space left. I think it's good to let the white of the paper breathe a little bit. I'm mixing here a little bit of I'm gonna let those dry, and I'm gonna work on the little leaves. So like I said, that green, I have to get a green that's gonna contrast the green I did in the background. So I'm gonna add quite a bit of yellow. I think that, if you see, I think that will stand out enough. If not, we'll make it even more yellow. Oh yeah, that'll definitely work. So let's go ahead and add that. Yeah, I think that works. So we might have to go, a little dark, a little lighter than we normally would because of the color background. If you wanted to do a different color, you could do purple. You could go purple instead of the blue like I did. Right, I like that. I am going to add a little bit of green back in. Some purple just to do, and I'm just going to touch a couple areas. Just add some variety in here. Don't want it to all be the same tone. That's just boring. And I might even just give it a little kiss of yellow in a couple spots. here, here, and just a little yellow highlights. All right, I'm gonna let this dry, and then we're gonna come and we're gonna do one more layer of, we're gonna punch up the red a little bit, not too much, but just a couple areas of red, and then we'll be done. All right, we're almost done, guys. I think I just want to add a couple areas of red and a little bit of pink. And so I don't want to do straight red. I think that would be too much, but just a little bit of pop of red, reddish orange. Just drop that in there. That's kind of the inside flower. Here, there, yeah, inside there, here, here, and then let's go a little bit orange. Only red there. And then I want to just, I think the green is reading kind of flat. So let's just do one tone down from the green. So I'm going to use that orange, get myself kind of an army green, do a couple notes of that. Not too much, because if I go too dark, then it's not going to stand out from the background. All right. So if you want, you can stop there. If you'd like, we can play with the pastels for a minute. And I'll show you what I would do with a painting like this. I would probably go in and take a little bit of pink in a couple areas and almost kind of kiss a couple areas with some color, some yellow. You don't want to add lines. I mean, you can do whatever you want. But I don't like to add lines. I just add areas of color. These particular pastels you can actually mix, and you can create new colors. So you can dip the end of these. These are called new pastels. And mix a color. So then you get these areas of creamy delightfulness that I love. There's a set on Amazon that works similarly that are not quite as expensive as the new pastels. So maybe I'll provide you a link to both. Of course, you don't need these to complete your painting, but I just wanted to show you a couple of things. Actually, I do like using them on watercolor just because they add a little bit of texture and create different values. But I think the painting is beautiful just the way it is. So we are all set. I hope you had fun. All you need to do is add your signature on the bottom. This little guy's ready for framing. Remember, if it gets crumply and crinkly like mine has, once it's dry, just wet the back lightly with paper towel or a cloth, and then press it between 2 layers of dry paper and between some heavy books, and it'll flatten right out and it'll be ready for framing. Well, that was fun. I hope you had fun as well. Again, here's that original painting that I'm working on. I'm working on a whole series of florals like these ones that should be in my shop in the next month or so. We'll see how many I get done. I'm having a great time, but it's still very much an experiment with the materials and the process. Here's the painting that we did together. I hope you had fun. I would love to see how yours turned out. I might frame mine in a little 5x7 frame. And I love that it doesn't need a mat or anything because we've already kind of framed it. You could do this at a bigger level. You could make a field full of flowers. You could do it without the background. You could change the background to yellow or blue or anything you want. Use your imagination. I hope you got some ideas of how to accomplish something like that, and saw some of the different materials that I've been working with and how I've been using them. So thanks for being in the studio with me today. Have a great day. Bye.